Edrin Hale learned the weight of duty before he learned the softness of joy. In Ashbourne City, where stone towers cut the sky and silence carried authority, children were not raised, they were prepared. Prepared to serve, to obey, to continue the unbroken line of sacrifice that kept the city standing. Edrin's father, Commander Alastair Hale, often said love was a luxury men like them could not afford. And so Edrin grew into his name, sharp-edged, disciplined, admired, never questioning the emptiness he carried like an extra rib in his chest. Before this story truly unfolds, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from, because stories like this travel farther when they're shared by hearts that understand them. Leora Vance came from a different kind of silence. Valehaven was quiet, but it breathed. The wind spoke through tall grass, and the river hummed secrets to those who listened. Leora had learned early that love was not safe, but it was necessary. Her mother, Serena, carried the echo of a smile that had once been broken by choosing the wrong man at the wrong time. Yet even with all her warnings, Serena never taught Leora to stop believing, only to be brave when belief hurt. Leora grew into warmth, into laughter that lingered, into a woman who felt deeply and refused to apologize for it. They met on a day that was supposed to mean nothing. Edrin had been sent to Valehaven on assignment, temporary oversight, nothing more. The Meridian Hall needed someone to evaluate whether the town's resources could be absorbed into Ashbourne's expanding reach. It was routine, clinical. He arrived with 2 aides and a notebook full of boxes waiting to be checked. He did not expect the town to look at him the way it did, curious, wary, quietly defiant. Leora first saw him at the market square. He stood out like a blade among cloth. Tall, composed, dressed in the muted grays of Ashbourne authority. He wasn't handsome in the easy way people talked about. He was precise, measured, dangerous in his stillness. When his eyes lifted and met hers, something in Leora's chest tightened. Not fear, not excitement, but recognition. As if her heart whispered, "This one will matter." She told herself to look away. She didn't. Their first words were unremarkable. "Is there a place here to get water?" he asked, voice calm, distant. She pointed. "By the fountain." The clean side, not the one the children throw stones into. A corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "Thank you." That should have been the end of it. But Ashbourne men didn't know how to be invisible, and Valehaven didn't know how to ignore storms when they arrived. Over the next weeks, Edrin returned to the market more often than necessary. He told himself it was observation, logistics, patterns of movement. Yet his feet always slowed near Leora's stall, where she sold pressed herbs and small glass bottles of oil she made herself. She spoke to customers with her hands as much as her mouth, her laughter spilling easily, as if the world had never taught her to ration joy. She noticed the way he watched her without meaning to. "You're not very subtle," she said one afternoon. "I'm not watching you," he replied automatically. She raised an eyebrow. "Then you should probably look somewhere else." He did, and felt the strange pull of loss immediately. It unsettled him. No one had unsettled Edrin Hale before. They began to talk. At first about nothing. Weather. Trade routes. The difference between Valehaven's river and Ashbourne's stone channels. Then slowly, dangerously, about things that mattered. Leora spoke of choice as if it were sacred. Edrin spoke of duty as if it were law written into bone. They disagreed often, but never cruelly. Each conversation felt like standing at the edge of something unnamed. "You talk like you don't belong to yourself," Leora said once, as they sat near the river at dusk. "I belong to my role," he answered. "That's not the same thing." He had no reply. What Edrin didn't say was that with her, the noise in his head softened. That when she laughed, something loosened in his chest that had been clenched for years. What Leora didn't say was that she saw the loneliness in the way he held himself too straight, like a man afraid that if he bent, he would break. Ashbourne noticed. High Chancellor Rowan Crest summoned Edrin back, for a briefing sooner than expected. The evaluation was going well, too well. Valehaven was stable, productive, resistant in ways Ashbourne found inconvenient. A decision had been made. Assimilation, Crest said, fingers steepled. With governance oversight. Edrin understood the unspoken word, control. "There will be pushback," he said carefully. "That's why you'll stay," Crest replied. "You've built trust." Edrin felt something cold settle in his stomach. Back in Valehaven, the news landed like a crack in the earth. People gathered. Voices rose. Leora stood among them, fists clenched, listening as Ashbourne's terms were read aloud in smooth, merciless language. That night, she went to Edrin. "You knew," she said. "Not a question." "I suspected," he admitted. "And you stayed." "I was sent." "And you agreed." Silence stretched between them, sharp and aching. "This isn't about you and me," he said finally. "Everything is about people," she snapped. "That's what you Ashbourne men never understand." He reached for her, then stopped himself. "I can protect Vale Haven from worse outcomes." "By becoming the face of the knife?" Her words cut deeper than she intended. He turned away, jaw tight. "If I refuse, someone else will come," he said. "Someone without restraint. And if you accept," she said softly, "you become them." That night, Leora cried alone for the first time in years. Not because she felt betrayed, yet, but because she felt the terrible truth forming between them. Love did not erase who you were before it arrived. And sometimes it asked for a price one person could not pay alone. Edrin spent sleepless nights staring at the ceiling of his assigned quarters. His father's voice echoed in memory. "Duty is not cruel. It is necessary." But Leora's voice lingered too, asking questions no oath had prepared him to answer. When protests broke out, Edrin stood between Ashbourne guards and Vale Haven citizens. He ordered restraint. He negotiated delays. He bent rules quietly, invisibly. From the outside, he looked like a savior. From the inside, he felt like a traitor to everyone at once. Marcus Crowell arrived 2 weeks later. Ambitious. Polished. Smiling too easily. "I hear you've gone native," Marcus said with a chuckle. Edrin didn't smile. "I hear you volunteered." Marcus's eyes flicked toward the town. Toward Leora. Toward the people who trusted Edrin. "Careful," Marcus said lightly. "Attachments complicate things." That night, Edrin went to Leora with a decision burning in his chest. "Come with me," he said, breathless. "To Ashbourne. I can arrange protection." "Status." She stared at him as if he'd spoken another language. "You want me to leave my home," she said slowly. "So you don't have to choose?" "I am choosing," he insisted. "Us." "No," she whispered. "You're choosing a way to keep everything without losing yourself. And that's not love." The words shattered something fragile and final. "I can't abandon my duty," he said. "And I can't abandon myself," she replied. They stood inches apart, hearts breaking in different directions. When she turned away, he didn't stop her. Vale Haven would remember that moment long after both of them. "We're gone." By the time dawn came, Edrin knew one truth with brutal clarity. He had chosen duty. And somewhere deep inside, something irreplaceable had already been lost. The morning after Leora turned away, Vale Haven felt altered, as if the town itself had sensed the fracture and shifted its weight uneasily. Edrin stood at the window of his quarters, watching the fog lift from the river, and for the first time in his life, duty did not feel solid beneath his feet. It felt thin, brittle, like ice that had already begun to crack. He reported to Meridian Hall's temporary office just after sunrise. Marcus Crowell was already there, boots propped casually on a chair, skimming documents with performative ease. He looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "You look tired," Marcus said. "Love will do that to a man." Edrin ignored the remark and moved to the table. "What are you really here for?" Marcus leaned back. "Oversight. Evaluation. And if necessary, correction." The words settled heavily between them. Outside, protests resumed. Smaller than before, quieter, but sharper. People no longer shouted with hope. They spoke with anger that had learned it might not be heard. Edrin issued orders for restraint again, but this time, Marcus countermanded them quietly, rerouting patrols, tightening curfews, escalating pressure just enough to provoke mistakes. Vale Haven began to bleed in small, invisible ways. Leora felt it immediately. Her stall at the market grew emptier. People hurried now, eyes down, voices low. Ashbourne guards stood at intersections where children once played. She watched an elderly man argue with a soldier over passage, watched fear replace stubborn pride in his posture, and something inside her hardened. She had chosen love once before, chosen it in Edrin, and now she understood what her mother had meant all those years ago. Love did not protect you from pain. It only taught you where pain could reach you deepest. Serena noticed the change in her daughter. "You're quieter," she said one evening as they prepared supper. "I'm listening," Leora replied. "To what?" "To the sound of people losing something." Serena's hands stilled. "And what are you losing?" Leora didn't answer. She didn't trust her voice not to break. Days turned into weeks. Edrin and Leora passed each other like strangers bound by gravity, but forbidden to collide. When their eyes met across the square, there was no anger, only a shared, aching awareness of what might have been. That absence hurt more than shouting ever could. Marcus watched it all with interest. "You could end this," he told Edrin one night as they reviewed reports. "Sign the final integration order. Full Ashbourne governance. No more unrest. And Valehaven loses its autonomy completely," Edrin said. "Yes," Marcus replied easily. "But you gain peace. And a promotion." Edrin thought of his father. Of Meridian Hall. Of the life he had been trained for since boyhood. He thought of Leora's eyes the night she refused him. "I need time," Edrin said. Marcus smiled. "Time is exactly what we don't have." That same night, Valehaven crossed a line. A young boy, barely 12, was detained for throwing a stone at an Ashbourne patrol. Nothing serious. No injuries. But Marcus insisted on an example. The boy was held overnight in Ashbourne custody, questioned without his parents present. By morning, the town erupted. Leora stood at the front of the crowd, her voice steady as she demanded the boy's release. For the first time, she did not look to Edrin. She did not expect him to intervene. That realization hit him harder than any accusation. He stepped forward anyway. "Release the child," Edrin ordered. Marcus's gaze sharpened. "You're overstepping. I am preventing a disaster." Marcus leaned in close. "You're compromising your position." Edrin straightened. "Then consider my position compromised." The boy was released. The crowd dispersed. For a moment, Valehaven breathed again. But Marcus did not forget. 2 days later, a formal summons arrived from Meridian Hall. Edrin was ordered to return to Ashbourne immediately to answer for procedural irregularities. Marcus would remain behind as acting authority. Leora heard the news from Eloan Reed. "They're taking him away," Eloan said, "and replacing him with Crowell Fully." Leora closed her eyes. She had told herself she no longer cared, that she had chosen her path. But the truth rose painfully clear. She did not want Edrin gone. She wanted him different. She found him at the river at dusk, the same place they had once talked about belonging. "They're sending you away," she said. "Yes. For how long?" "I don't know." Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. "I never wanted you to choose between us," Leora said quietly. "I wanted you to choose yourself." Edrin swallowed. "I don't know who that is anymore." She looked at him, then really looked. The disciplined posture. The tired eyes. The man who had tried to hold two worlds together and found his hands too small. "If you leave," she said, "Valehaven will suffer." "And if I stay," he replied, "I lose everything I was raised to be." She stepped closer. Sometimes losing is the only honest outcome. He wanted to touch her, to ask her to wait, to promise something he wasn't sure he could give. Instead, he nodded once. "I'm sorry," he said. "So am I," she answered. When Edrin departed at dawn, there was no farewell crowd. No ceremony. Just fog, and the quiet understanding that something fragile had slipped through everyone's fingers. Ashbourne City greeted him like an old, unforgiving friend. Stone walls. Narrow corridors. Meridian Hall looming with its cold symmetry. Commander Alastair Hale waited for him inside. "You've embarrassed us," his father said without preamble. "I've done my duty," Edrin replied. "No," Alastair snapped. "You've confused compassion with weakness." Edrin met his father's gaze. "They are not the same. They are when they interfere with order." The tribunal was swift. Controlled. Polite in the way only power could be. Edrin was stripped of his oversight authority, reassigned to internal operations, important but invisible. A warning, not an exile. "You should be grateful," High Chancellor Cress said. "Others would not have been so lenient." Edrin bowed. He did not feel grateful. He felt hollow. Back in Valehaven, Marcus Crowell moved quickly. Curfews tightened. Trade routes were rerouted through Ashbourne channels. Local leaders were replaced with advisors. Resistance flared, then dimmed under pressure. Valehaven did not fall in flames. It suffocated slowly. Leora became a quiet center of defiance. She organized food distributions when supplies dwindled. She spoke calmly to soldiers, refused to provoke, refused to submit. People began to look to her, not as a leader with titles, but as someone who reminded them who they were before fear took root. Marcus noticed. "She's dangerous," he told his superiors. "Not violent. Worse." Orders came down. One evening, Ashbourne guards arrived at Leora's home with papers citing disruptive influence. She was given 24 hours to leave Valehaven. Serena held her as the words sank in. You can't go, she whispered. This is your home. They're already taking it, Leora replied. She packed little. Essentials only. Before dawn, she stood one last time at the river, watching the water carry reflections of a life she was being forced to abandon. She thought of Edrin then. Not with anger. Not even with regret. With a deep, weary understanding. He had chosen duty. She had chosen love. And both choices had cost them everything. As the transport carried her away from Vale Haven, Leora did not look back. In Ashbourne, Edrin felt it when she left. There was no message. No signal. Just a sudden, profound emptiness that settled in his chest, heavier than any punishment Meridian Hall could impose. He stood in the corridor outside his assigned office, surrounded by murmuring officials and echoing footsteps, and realized the terrible truth too late. By standing still between duty and love, he had lost them both. Years did not soften Ashbourne City. They sharpened it. Stone towers rose higher, corridors grew longer, and the language of duty refined itself into something colder, more efficient. Edrin Hale moved through it all like a ghost with a name people still respected. He rose in rank, not through ambition, but through inevitability. He was reliable, silent, uncomplicated, the kind of man systems loved because he asked no questions that mattered. Inside, however, Edrin lived with a quiet fracture that never healed. Vale Haven became a memory people spoke of carefully. Official records called it a successful integration. Trade improved. Order was maintained. On paper, it was a victory. In truth, it was a place slowly erased of its soul, reduced to output and compliance. Edrin read the reports sometimes late at night and wondered how something could survive so completely and still be gone. He never asked about Leora Vance. Not because he didn't want to know, but because he knew what knowing would cost him. Leora's exile was not dramatic. No chains. No public accusation. Just quiet displacement, the most efficient kind of cruelty. She moved first through border towns, then farther, following rumors of work, of places where Ashbourne's reach thinned. She learned to live light, to carry her life in a single bag, to form connections she knew might not last. Love did not leave her. It changed shape. She worked with her hands again, healing oils, pressed herbs, later teaching others what she knew. Communities welcomed her cautiously at first, then fully. There was something grounding about her presence, something that reminded people of who they were before survival demanded everything. Still, at night, she dreamed of rivers. She dreamed of a man standing at the edge of one, reaching out, always too late. Years passed. Marcus Crowell rose faster than anyone expected. He thrived in systems that rewarded calculation over conscience. Vale Haven became his calling card, cited in Meridian Hall as proof of effective governance. When unrest surfaced elsewhere, Marcus was sent. When resistance hardened, Marcus was praised. Edrin watched from a distance. They spoke rarely now, exchanging formal greetings at gatherings where power gathered to congratulate itself. Marcus wore success easily. Edrin wore it like a coat he could never remove. Commander Alastair Hale died quietly one winter. No ceremony. No public mourning. Just a notice circulated through the ranks. Edrin attended the private burial alone. Standing over his father's grave, he felt no anger, only a deep, unnameable sadness. Alastair had lived and died by duty, never once stepping outside its lines. And now, faced with that end, Edrin wondered what it had all amounted to. That night, for the first time in years, he said Leora's name aloud. It sounded strange, familiar, painful. The moment of reckoning came without warning. An internal audit crossed Edrin's desk, routine at first glance. One of Marcus Crowell's operations had gone wrong. Not publicly. Quietly. Resources misallocated. Communities destabilized. The familiar pattern of control, pressure, silence. But this time, the name of the place stopped Edrin cold. It was near the Outer Territories, a region where Ashbourne's authority weakened. A place Leora might have passed through. Edrin read the report again. And again. For the first time in his career, he hesitated. Then he did something unthinkable. He requested reassignment. Meridian Hall was not pleased. "You're indispensable where you are," High Chancellor Crest said, eyes narrowing. "So was Crowell," Edrin replied calmly. Until he wasn't. The room went quiet. After a long pause, Crest nodded once. "Very well. Temporary review authority. Don't disappoint us again." Edrin bowed. His hands trembled slightly as he turned away. The journey took days. The farther he traveled from Ashbourne, the lighter his chest felt, and the more afraid he became. He told himself this was duty. Oversight. Correction. He did not admit the deeper truth until he stood at the edge of a settlement and heard her voice before he saw her. Leora was speaking to a small crowd, calm and steady, explaining how to ration supplies without panic. She looked older, stronger. Her hair was threaded with silver she hadn't had before. When she turned and saw him, the world seemed to hold its breath. Neither of them spoke at first. So much history stood between them that words felt inadequate. "You shouldn't be here," she said finally. "I know. Are you here to take something else?" He shook his head. "I'm here to stop it." She studied him, searching for the man she had loved, and the one who had let her go. "You look tired," she said. "So do you." A fragile smile flickered, then disappeared. They walked together that evening, not by a river, but through narrow paths worn by people who had learned to endure. Edrin listened as Leora spoke of exile, of rebuilding, of learning that love could survive without permanence. She listened as he spoke of Ashbourne, of regret, of a life lived correctly and emptily. "I used to think choosing love meant winning," Leora said. "Now I know it just means choosing honestly." "I thought choosing duty meant security," Edrin replied. "Now I know it only delays loss." They did not touch. They did not promise. They both understood something essential. Some choices cannot be undone. Some paths never meet again, even when the people walking them do. Edrin fulfilled his assignment. Marcus Crowell's operation was dismantled quietly. Authority shifted. Damage was limited, but not erased. Ashbourne would continue. It always did. When it was time for Edrin to leave, he stood before Leora once more. "I won't ask you to come with me," he said. "Good," she replied gently. "I wouldn't go." They shared a long look, filled not with longing, but with acceptance. "I loved you," he said. "I know," she answered. "And I loved you too. That was never the problem." They parted at dawn. This time, neither looked back. Years later, Ashbourne records would note Edrin Hale as a man of integrity. Leora Vance would be remembered in quiet places as a woman who helped others find their footing after the ground gave way. Their names would never be linked in any official account. But sometimes, late at night, Edrin would stand by a window and imagine a river running free beyond stone walls. And sometimes Leora would pause mid-sentence, sensing a distant echo of a life that had shaped her without defining her. He chose duty. She chose love. Both lost. And both, in the end, learned to live with what remained. Before we close this story, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from, because stories like this deserve to travel. To remind us that some choices don't lead to victory, only truth.